Judges can't hold back tears. Boy sings with soul, sparkling heart loudly crying. The lights were blinding, the stage enormous, and the silence deafening. In that moment, a small boy with trembling hands and worn-out shoes stood before thousands. His name was Elias, just 12 years old, from a tiny village where the walls were thin and dreams even thinner. The crowd waited, expecting another nervous child with a song too big for his voice. But when he opened his mouth, something happened. The world seemed to stop breathing. Elias's voice wasn't loud. It was pure. It carried a pain too heavy for his age and a hope too fragile to ignore. Within seconds, the entire audience was silent. Even the judges, hardened by years of performances, leaned forward, eyes glistening. They didn't know yet what story that voice carried, but they felt it deep in their souls. Elias grew up in a small fishing town in the Philippines. His father had been a fisherman, but a storm one night changed everything. The waves swallowed their small boat, and his father never came home. His mother, once full of laughter, began working day and night at a nearby restaurant, scrubbing dishes until her hands bled. Elias would wait outside, singing to the rhythm of the rain to keep himself from crying. His only dream was to one day buy his mother a real house, one with a roof that didn't leak when it stormed. Music became his only escape. He would listen to old recordings on a cracked phone that someone had thrown away. That's how he discovered Hotel California. The melody touched him deeply, but he didn't know why. Maybe it was the sadness in the song, or maybe the feeling of being trapped in a dream you couldn't escape. Either way, it became his favorite. He practiced it under the stars, near the shore, where the ocean waves became his orchestra. When a local singing contest came to town, his mother encouraged him to try. "Elias," she said softly, "your voice is a gift. Let the world hear it." They didn't have money for new clothes, so she washed his school uniform until it looked white again. He sang barefoot that day and won first place. Someone from the contest, a volunteer producer, recorded his performance and uploaded it online. Within weeks, the video reached the producers of a national talent show. They sent an invitation. Elias had never been on a plane before. His mother borrowed money for the trip, whispering prayers the entire flight. When they reached the city, everything looked like another world. Tall buildings, flashing lights, people rushing everywhere. For the first time, Elias felt small, almost invisible. But his mother's voice grounded him. "Sing for your father, Elias. Sing for your dreams." The day of the audition arrived. Backstage, he watched other contestants. Some dressed in designer clothes, others confident, laughing and chatting with their parents. Elias sat quietly in the corner, holding his old microphone charm, something his father had made from a broken keychain. It was his lucky charm, and he never sang without it. When his name was called, Elias walked onto the massive stage. His heart pounded, hands shaking so hard he could barely hold the mic. The judges smiled politely. One of them asked, "What will you sing for us today?" Elias swallowed hard. "Hotel California," he said softly. A ripple of surprise went through the judges. One whispered to another, "That's a tough song for a boy his age." But the moment the first note escaped his lips, the doubt disappeared. His voice was fragile but full of emotion, like an echo of a life far older than 12 years. He sang not just with his mouth, but with every piece of his broken childhood. Every word carried a memory. The storm that took his father, the nights he watched his mother cry quietly, the times he sang to forget hunger. By the second verse, the entire hall had fallen silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the click of a camera, and the trembling in his voice. When he reached the final chorus, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming emotion that spilled from his soul. And then came the final note, long, trembling, and beautiful. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of the judges covered her face, tears streaming down. Another judge stood up and clapped slowly, his voice breaking as he said, "That was the most honest performance I've ever heard." The golden buzzer slammed down. Confetti burst through the air as the crowd erupted in cheers. Elias froze, tears filling his eyes. His mother, standing backstage, fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands. After years of pain, struggle, and silence, her son's voice had broken through every barrier. That night, the video went viral across the world. Millions watched, shared, and cried with him. People wrote messages saying his voice gave them hope again. Some said they felt their own pain heal through his song. But fame didn't change Elias. When asked in interviews how he felt, he simply said, "I just wanted my mom to smile again." Months later, Elias used the prize money to build a small house by the sea. It wasn't grand or fancy, but it had strong walls and a roof that didn't leak. On the first night there, his mother lit a candle by the window, whispering, "Your father would be proud." Elias looked at the stars and smiled, remembering the nights he sang alone under the same sky. Years passed, and Elias continued to sing, not for money, not for fame, but for hearts that needed healing. Every stage he stood on, he carried his father's spirit, his mother's love, and his own journey from silence to song. His story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest voice, when filled with truth and soul, can touch the entire world. And every time he sang, Hotel California, the judges, the crowd, and even strangers across oceans couldn't hold back the tears, because Elias wasn't just singing a song. He was singing life itself, the boy who sang with his soul-sparkling heart loudly crying. The morning after his golden buzzer performance, Elias woke up in a small hotel room with sunlight spilling through thin curtains. For the first time in years, he didn't wake up to the sound of waves or his mother's alarm from the restaurant. Instead, it was quiet, strangely quiet. He turned to see his mother sitting by the window, holding a cup of coffee she couldn't afford to buy before. Her eyes were red from crying all night, but this time, they were tears of joy. She looked at him and smiled. "You did it, Anak," she whispered in Tagalog. "You made the world hear you." Elias smiled shyly, still unsure if it was all real. Just hours ago, he had been a boy no one knew, a boy with worn shoes and a cracked voice. Now, his name was everywhere. The show producers knocked on the door later that morning, congratulating them and offering media interviews. For Elias, it was all too much. He wasn't used to cameras, microphones, and people asking about his journey. He just wanted to go home, hug his mom, and sing by the sea. But his story had already begun to spread like wildfire. The video of his performance had reached millions of views overnight. People from different countries wrote comments like, "This boy made me cry, his voice healed my heart," and "the purest voice I've ever heard." Some even called him the boy with a soul of gold. When the next stage of the competition came, the semi-finals, Elias was nervous again. The pressure was heavy this time. Everyone expected something magical, something even greater than before. Backstage, he heard other contestants talking about how they were sure the judges would love them more this round. Elias stayed quiet, clutching his father's keychain in his palm. He wanted to make his father proud again. This time, he chose a different song, one he had written himself. It was about missing someone you loved but knowing they were still watching over you. The lyrics were simple, written in his notebook on nights when he couldn't sleep. When he stepped on stage again, the crowd cheered louder than before. The judges smiled warmly, already knowing the boy's heart would deliver something special. As the first soft chords played, Elias closed his eyes and began. "Greater than, I still see your face in the wind and the sea. I still feel your love in the stars above me. You're gone, but your voice still sings in my heart. I'll keep your song alive, even when we're apart." Each word flowed like a confession, raw and tender. The camera zoomed in on the judges. One had her hands over her mouth, another whispered, "He wrote this himself." By the time he reached the final note, tears had already fallen down his cheeks. He wasn't performing. He was remembering. When the music faded, there was silence again, then an explosion of applause. The audience stood as one, clapping, cheering, crying. The host came onto the stage, hugging the trembling boy. One of the judges, still wiping his eyes, spoke softly. "Elias, music like yours doesn't just touch the ears, it touches the soul. You reminded us why we fell in love with music in the first place." After the show, back in their small room, his mother hugged him tightly. "Your father would have loved that song," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "He did," he whispered. "I felt him there." But as the fame grew, new challenges began to appear. People started contacting them with offers, contracts, sponsorships, and interviews. Some wanted to use Elias's story to promote their own brands. Others promised fame and money but asked for control over his music. Elias's mother, though kind and humble, didn't understand much about contracts or show business. Soon, rumors spread online that Elias's story was fabricated, that he was coached, and that the producers used him for views. The same internet that had lifted him up now began to tear him down. It broke his heart to read comments saying he was fake. He wanted to scream that he was just a boy who missed his father and sang from the truth inside him. One night, he walked alone to the rooftop of the hotel. The city lights shimmered like stars on the ground. His mother found him there, sitting quietly, staring at the sky. "Mama," he said softly, "maybe I should stop singing. Maybe it's too much." She knelt beside him and took his hand. "Elias, people will always talk. But your voice, your gift, was never about them. It's about you. It's about your father. It's about hope." Her words sank deep into his heart. He realized then that music wasn't about winning or losing. It was about healing. At the grand finale, Elias returned to the stage one last time. He didn't wear anything fancy. Just a white shirt and his father's keychain around his neck. The crowd roared as he walked out, and when the music started, his voice filled the hall once again. He sang, "Hotel California," the song that started everything, but this time it was different. Softer, deeper. He sang with gratitude, not pain, with peace, not sorrow. By the final note, everyone was crying again. The judges stood, applauding through tears. Elias's mother watched from the side, her hands clasped together, whispering prayers of thanks. When the winner was announced, it wasn't him. Another contestant took the trophy. The crowd gasped, but Elias just smiled. He walked up to the winner, shook hands, and said, "You deserve it." The cameras caught that moment, and it went viral again, not because he lost, but because he showed grace greater than victory. Later, in interviews, he said, "Music gave me more than any trophy ever could. It gave me purpose." Years passed. Elias grew up. His voice matured, and his fame faded like the sunset, but his message remained timeless. He became a music teacher, helping other children from poor backgrounds discover their voices. He told them, "Don't sing to impress, sing to express." And sometimes, when the world feels too heavy, he walks by the sea where it all began. He sings softly to the wind, feeling his father's presence once again. His voice still carries through the waves, gentle, strong, full of soul. And though the world has changed, one thing remains true: whenever Elias sings, hearts still listen, and tears still fall. The voice that healed the world's sparkling heart loudly crying. Years had passed since the golden buzzer moment that changed Elias's life. The glow of fame had dimmed, but something more beautiful had taken its place: peace. Elias was now 17, taller, more confident, yet still humble and quiet. He had built a small music school in his hometown, not far from the sea where his father had been lost. The walls were painted with bright colors, and above the entrance was a simple sign that read, "Sing with soul, music for every heart." Children from the nearby villages came every afternoon. Some were shy, some couldn't afford instruments, and some didn't even know how to read music. But Elias didn't care. He taught them what his mother had taught him: how to sing with emotion, how to let pain become power. He remembered his own struggles, those hungry nights, those doubts, those tears, and it made him patient with his students. Whenever one of them said, "I can't do it," he smiled gently and said, "I once thought that too." One day, a little girl named Mia joined the school. She was only 8 and had lost her voice after a traumatic accident. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't smile, and flinched every time someone raised their voice. But she loved music. She would sit by the piano, touching the keys softly, as if afraid they might break. Elias noticed her right away. He never pushed her to sing. Instead, he would play the guitar nearby, letting her listen. Slowly, she began to hum along, quietly at first, then a little louder each week. Months later, during a small school performance, Mia surprised everyone. When it was her turn, she stepped on stage, trembling, and began to sing a song Elias had written for her, "The Sound of Hope." Her tiny, shaky voice filled the room, and the parents cried. Elias stood in the back, eyes glistening, remembering his own first performance all those years ago. When Mia finished, she ran into his arms, whispering, "Thank you for giving my voice back." He held her tightly, knowing that moment meant more than any trophy, any golden buzzer, or any fame. Meanwhile, in the city, the same talent show that had once discovered Elias was now celebrating its 10th anniversary. The producers reached out to invite all their most memorable contestants back for a reunion concert. They wanted Elias to perform again, on the same stage where he once made the judges cry. At first, he hesitated. He wasn't sure if he belonged there anymore. He wasn't the poor boy singing for survival now. He was a teacher, a mentor, a man who sang for others. But his mother encouraged him again. "You started there," she said softly. "Go back, not to prove anything, but to remind them who you are." "Answer," he agreed. The night of the reunion concert arrived. The grand hall was filled with thousands of people, lights shimmering like stars. The hosts introduced him as the boy who sang with soul, the voice that touched millions. The crowd cheered as Elias stepped onto the stage, now older, with calm eyes and a quiet smile. He looked around, remembering everything, the first time he stood there, trembling, with nothing but hope. Now he stood tall, wearing a simple white shirt, holding the same microphone charm his father had made. The band waited for his signal. He began to sing. This time, it wasn't Hotel California. It was a song of his own, a song that told his whole story. The lyrics spoke of loss, courage, faith, and love. It was about the boy who had sung through pain and found peace, about the mother who never gave up, and about how music can heal even the deepest scars. Greater than, from the storms I came, to the light I found. Every tear I cried became a sound. The world may change, but the song remains. A voice of love through joy and pain. The entire audience was silent, hanging on every word. The cameras zoomed in on the judges, some of the same ones from years ago. They were crying again, not just because of his voice, but because of what he represented. He was no longer just a contestant. He was a living story, a proof that art can save lives. As the final note echoed through the hall, the audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. The host ran to the stage, handing him a bouquet of white roses. "Elias," she said, her voice shaking, "you didn't just perform tonight. You reminded us why we love music. You reminded us of hope." Elias smiled and turned toward the audience. "Thank you," he said softly. "But this song wasn't just for me. It was for every child who's ever felt small, for every parent who's ever sacrificed everything, and for every soul that still believes dreams can come true." His mother, sitting in the front row, wiped her tears. The camera caught her face, and once again, millions watching at home were moved to tears. After the show, producers offered him record deals, endorsements, even movie contracts. But Elias politely declined. "I already have what I need," he said with a gentle smile. "My home, my school, my music. He returned to his village a few days later. The children welcomed him with flowers, laughter, and a handmade banner that read, "Welcome home, Teacher Elias." He laughed, hugged them all, and promised to keep teaching. At sunset, he walked alone to the beach, guitar in hand. The wind brushed through his hair, the sea waves whispered like an old friend. He strummed a soft tune, looking out at the horizon. Somewhere deep inside, he felt his father's spirit, listening, proud, and smiling. He closed his eyes and sang one last line to the wind. Greater than, as long as someone listens, the song never ends. And with that, the boy who once sang from pain continued to sing from purpose, forever a voice that healed hearts around the world. Final message. Dreams aren't just about fame or success. They're about impact. Sometimes, one honest voice can heal a million silent hearts. So, never stop singing your truth, because someone out there needs to hear it.